All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host for the next hour. My name is Dane Sorenson, and you have entered Zero Doubt Zone, where we seek truth, we vet facts, and so help me God. No, really, like help me God. We're going to do it together. This is an exciting show. We have a high-profile guest, in my opinion. My first guest was my wife on our 10-year anniversary, which is show number 2 on August 20th. But my first, non-related guest is Mr. Tim Donnelly, former assemblyman, who is the author of the referendum to halt the mandatory vaccine our vaccine bill SB277 signed into law by our illustrious governor, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Mr. Brown. I do want to thank you, actually, Mr. Brown, because this has inspired me to, what do we say here at Zero Doubt Zone? Get involved! And that's what we're doing. So right around 8:15 or so, Mr. Tim Donnelly, hoping everything works out, that he is going to call in with his trusty statewide coordinator, Heather Hawks. They were gracious enough to, on short notice, actually jump in here. I was going to talk about the Federal Reserve. And when the Donnelly camp called in and said, hey, we'll come on, I was like, Federal Reserve can wait. So that's very exciting. And that's only a couple minutes away. So please stay tuned on that. He's probably going to talk for us about 20, 30 minutes or so. I actually gave him the whole hour, but they're like, wow, we got a lot of stuff on our plate. So whatever you can give us, Mr. Donnelly, we're super, super happy about. Zero Doubt Zone, check us out on YouTube. We have just posted another video, a small clip of our third show talking about the National Defense Authorization Act. I did get a little heated. I got a little passionate about it, and guess what? That's not the end of it, folks. That's rant number 1 of about 5,000. So get ready. It is going to be a bumpy ride. It's going to be an interesting ride. Let's see here. Last show talked about the whole show was about illegal immigration, and I covered the Dennis Michael Lynch DVD, I should say the documentary by Dennis Michael Lynch called They Come to America. It's actually a triple disc set. I hope some of you Googled it. I hope some of you potentially bought it. I want to thank Rick once again for purchasing that for me and sending it to me. My wife actually said, hey, can we finish that? I'm like, well, I already did, but she wants to finish it. She got through the first disc and a half, and her mind was pretty blown. And I touched on the fact that the borders are wide open. I mean, like, what was the quote from last week? A virtual sieve, like a sieve, just people just filing in. Okay. Don't have to get back. Don't have to relive that. You can just check it out on YouTube. Also check out zerodoubtzone.com, Twitter, Zero Doubt Zone. And what else are we forgetting? We got Facebook, right? Zero Doubt Zone. It's been some interesting debates and whatnot through some posts that I threw out there. And actually part of our team had tweeted. I didn't have a chance to actually go through it, but it was good. It was good actual, not necessarily practice, but it was good to see what other people think and some of their views on it. And it was interesting. It started a debate on certain things, and some of these people are very well spoken, very well researched, and very intelligent. But they didn't know about off-gassing. I found that very interesting. Yeah, you're saying it's coming from people who aren't vaccinated. My question again was, if you don't have the virus, how can you spread it? If you have the virus, well, then you would, logically, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a regular guy trying to continue to exercise my, keep that critical mind exercising, because if you don't, it just goes away. So, all right, I'm not going to get too far into that, but that was, I felt it's important to talk about, we're going to keep hammering vaccines. We're going to keep hammering the border. Talking about illegal immigration, I should say. We are going to dive into the Federal Reserve. We're going to dive into the National Security Agency, the illegality, the unconstitutionality of it. There's so much stuff coming down the pipe, just hitting us so fast and so hard. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention way long before, but is it just me, or does it seem that everything's going so fast? Something I didn't bring up before was we had the gay marriage go through, was that last month or so. At the same time, the Confederate flag was happening. So we had everybody just so consumed with that and focused on that. Well, guess what was happening right in the middle of all that? Right when you were, most of us were really happy, for the lesbian and gay community. Or did I say that wrong? I don't know. I'm not always politically correct and learned, so I'm working on it. And then the Confederate flag thing. So we had both of those things going on. But right smack dab in the middle, a little secret meeting. It seems to be happening more and more. Was the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Google it. I'm not kidding. Google it. Search it. YouTube it. I don't know. But put some effort towards it and actually look at what that means. Because I don't even know completely what it means because, it was so hush-hush and so secret that only the elite and the upper-ups and the Congress, I don't even know if Congress was even involved. I mean, I guess because it was a very, 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 very serious trade deal. But my understanding was pretty much stripped a lot more of our rights. So it seems like rights are just getting kicked, just booted. And everyone's like, it's cool. I'm going to watch Sleeping with the Kardashians. I said that wrong. I'm sorry. Not Sleeping with the Kardashians. Is that show even on anymore? I can't keep up. But while you were distracted, we are going to be working the show a little bit. As I've said before, man, this whole thing is a work in progress. I'm going to evolve. The show's going to evolve. We have to. We can't be complacent. So, there's going to be little tweaks here and there, and maybe one day I'll wear a suit. Maybe not. I get too hot. But I am wearing a very nice T-shirt. My fellow band, or I should say my former band, I hope you guys are going to be watching this. This is Pacific Kings right here. I want to give a shout out to them because they are some very talented guys that I miss playing music with, and I hope you're still keeping it alive. Let's get into our advertisers before the Donnelly camp calls in. We have Camerling Photography, who's actually doing the video, sir. Thank you so much. Camerling Photography and Video provides services for custom family portraits, dream weddings, and commercial business photography. Call them today at 831-477-9077 or find them on the web at johnkphoto.com. That's JOHNKPHOTO.com. Look your best with Camerling Photography. Can't forget sci-fire.com. Do you need hosting or marketing services for your website? Don't think you're getting enough customers. Are your competitors outranking you in search engines even though you have a better product? A sponsor and contributor to this show, Zero Doubt Zone, has been in the business of driving literally millions of customers and dollars to his clients' websites for the past 18 years. It's a long time, and that's a whole lot of money being generated there by Mr. Sci-Fire. So visit sci-fire.com, that's PSYPHIRE.com, and take your business to the next level. We also have Blind & Shutter Depot, and that's locally owned and operated in Santa Cruz, and will provide you with the knowledge and experience of a big box store, but with the excellent customer service and reasonable prices you expect from a small shop. From shutters to shades, Blind & Shutter Depot will provide you with all of your window covering needs. Visit us at blindandshutterDepot.com or call 831-419-0489 for a free estimate today. I'm excited. We got Mr. Tim Donnelly, the former assemblyman who has gone to bat for the people of California. Those of you who maybe don't even care, this man does. I haven't even gone to his bio yet. And I did do some research. I did some digging. Check out Tim Donnelly. You can go to his Facebook page. He also has a radio show going on as well. Very interesting man, a patriot in my opinion, and a man I respect and hope to get to know. But let's hear what the Donnelly camp has to say. Hello, Heather and Mr. Donnelly. How are you guys doing this evening? Thank you so much for calling in to Zero Doubt Zone. My name's Dane. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Dane.
All right, Heather, how's it going?
Great.
So I had you down as a statewide coordinator for the SB277 referendum. I had you as an activist mom who has been in the thick of the fight against SB277 since the bill was introduced back in February. You've also been the grassroots organizer. You've been the media coordinator and public speaker here in California. First of all, I want to thank you, Heather, for going to bat for a lot of us who haven't taken the time or done what you've done. Actually, I'm not even asking a question. I want to give you the floor and kind of see what's on your mind and what you'd like to say to the public.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, when I first heard about SB 277, I immediately got involved and got active in grassroots. And what that looked like for me was organizing with local people and going up to the Capitol to lobby, create educational materials for our legislators, And then it turned into leading rallies and coordinating with media, and it just became a really big part of my life. And I couldn't stop. When the bill passed, I said, okay, I'm glad to have a break, but I need to keep going. I need to keep fighting. And Tim called me and said, I'm filing a referendum. Will you help? And absolutely, I worked very closely with Assemblyman Donnelly just because he's so active in parents' rights. So he had been part of, giving advice and really helping with the rallies and things like that. So that's how we knew each other. And my skill set is well suited to organizations. So that's how I got involved. The first thing I noticed about the referendum was that where grassroots efforts had been divided in their focus in the initial phase of the fight, all of that went away for the referendum. We all became united, regardless of what group we were from or what we had heard about each other's group or what part of the state. We all just instantly had one mission. And what we've seen is the power of that mission. The number of volunteers, the places we've been able to reach, businesses, churches, very diverse groups coming on board and saying, let us help you in what you're doing. And it's very powerful,
Wow, amazing. So how did you come about working with Mr. Donnelly? Did you reach out to him like years ago, or you just liked his policies, or how did you and Tim cross paths? So he just knew of you because you were such a go-getter and defender of liberty?
I knew that he had been part of the fight on SB277. So when I started working...
Remind me what that was, I'm sorry.
That was the bill a couple of years ago, also written by Senator Pan, where he lumped in religious exemption and a philosophical objection under personal belief. So it seemed innocuous at the time, but really his goal was to take away the religious exemption back then. And Governor Brown didn't let it happen. He insisted on the religious exemption. That's how we got where we are today.
I wonder what changed in that regard.
It's a great question. I know a lot of us who watched this bill get pushed so haphazardly through the House in California were desperately hoping that Governor Brown was maintaining that family commitment to the religious exemption. His father introduced the religious exemption back in '61, and he held true to it with SB277, and we were really hoping. And that was one of the most devastating things, was that it was less than 24 hours before he signed the bill, and that was just the final blow. I think for those of us who had been in the fight, it made us more fierce in our convictions, and none of us walked away.
What do you think about, not to jump too far away, but what do you think about the bill, the new one that just came out, SB792, which is now mandating people who volunteer, I'm assuming it's going to be teachers as well, but parents that volunteer at the school. That's also a mandate for adults, which I believe is 7 specific vaccines like MMR and Tdap and stuff like that. I'm sure you're aware of that, but is your camp, you and Mr. Donnelly, are you guys planning on working together on something with that, or are you guys still just trying to go, well, we're trying to deal with the first major one here. Let's work on the next one after we can get some traction on this?
Yeah, exactly. We're focusing on 277 right now, and I think what's going to happen with 792, if I have to guess, I think that's one is going to take care of itself, because, it's funny, I talk to a lot of people about this bill, and a lot of people say this is important. Kids should get their vaccines. And I say, well, wait a minute. This isn't the only bill. And I start talking about the other bills, and now suddenly I have their attention.
Wait, what? We have to get our shots too? What?
Exactly. Exactly. And they say, well, that's unacceptable. What bill number is that? Tell me more. And so it's very interesting how easy it is for them to say, well, children should have their vaccines mandated. And that's where you see the dogma of this whole thing. It's like we're indoctrinated to believe that vaccines are an essential part of our health and well-being.
Right.
That may be true. But for the government to say, well, you don't get to have any conscientious awareness around that, and that's just it's going to become a fact of life, is where we say that's too far. And so the general public says, no, we accept that as a fact of life. In fact, we like it. But then when they realize that now this is coming to their front door, they're raising eyebrows and saying, well, I want to learn more about these vaccines. because some of these people are going to have to get a lot of shots at one time if they're going to get up to date. And that's scary whether you're a child or an adult.
Oh, but there's no, I don't mean to be sarcastic. Actually, I do mean to be sarcastic, but it's safe and effective, and there's no side effects. Sorry.
Exactly. No, you can be sarcastic with me because I'm sarcastic myself. I get it. It's very interesting to see the double standard almost immediately on their face.
And you know what I've found is, actually, okay, I'll be honest, I'm new. Okay, this is only my 5th show, but I've been working on this for a long time. And starting off with my very first show, I was going to start with the Federal Reserve and the unconstitutional NSA spying, but then the vaccine bill came through, and I had to say, you know what? I got to talk about this. And I started really digging into it. And now when I talk to people, even on Facebook, they'll hit me and be like, oh, well, science is certain, you're a kook, you're endangering everyone's lives and all this other stuff. But it's like, okay, what about the ingredients? What about the GMO? What about the off-gassing? And nobody has an answer. No one's like, well, GMO's fine. Okay, well, then you eat your GMO and shoot it inside your body. But what about clean? I mean, Heather, have you heard about clean vaccines? Have you heard about the clean stuff that they don't marry, the MMR all together? And I mean, have you researched that, or are you just so focused on this? Do you know?
I know from being involved in the activity around vaccines, there are a lot of questions, and people have been asking, can we get the good vaccines back, the single shots, just the measles, just the mumps,
right.
And really trying to put the pressure on the pharmaceutical companies. The problem there, and I'm going to be very direct with you,
Absolutely.
The pharmaceutical company owns the culture in this country.
No.
And they know that.
Heather,
right.
come on. That's
I'm
not
so
true.
cynical.
I know. You're a conspiracy theorist. I'm sorry, continue.
No, it's true. But it's no longer a theory because I've proven it at every pass. And all I need to do is be involved in vaccines. I don't even have to be involved in anything else to know that that's the case. And so when you realize that, and you say, okay, but we need a culture shift where people are saying, almost 100% of the people are saying, I'm not doing it until you do it the way I want it, and that's clean. And that doesn't just mean no thimerosal. That means no aluminum. That means no aborted fetal tissue. That means
polysorbate 80.
Yeah, no peanut oil that you call something else that we can't identify. No,
what about
all these
beef extract for all the vegans?
Exactly. I want to know exactly what's in this substance, and I want to know how my immune system and my body are going to fully respond. And I will tell you right now, when people say the science is in, I don't think we even know 100% that science on all the aspects of the vaccines is in. Because I read Dr. Tenpenny, I read some of the stories that parents have told me about how their individual child has responded to vaccines, genetic sensitivity or no. And I go, that science all day long, that means something to me. Because as a mother, I know what my kids are reacting to and what they're not reacting to. So I think it's very compelling.
But Heather, you're not a scientist. I mean, these are scientists who say this. And I'm joking, but my question is who's putting forth the science? Who's backing that science? I've dug into some of this stuff, and it's like, wait, that was put forth by the pharmaceutical company. Okay, what do you think? I mean, I got you, and obviously you have a lot of knowledge. This is very exciting for me, by the way. What do you think about the 1986 National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act that was passed by Ronald Reagan? Do you know about that?
I do, and here's what I think. I've thought a lot about this, and I think when vaccines were originally discovered and invented, they had the best intentions, nothing but the best intentions. Yeah. And people go back and they talk about polio, and I think about polio, and I obviously was not part of that generation, but I know a lot of folks that were, and I think what an amazing thing for them to suddenly have freedom from this fear of polio, right?
Right.
And I think that this concept, it worked so well with polio, and it did such great things for people that they said, okay, let's do some more.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what they didn't do is pay attention to the finer points. And that's when people started having consequences, medical consequences.
Yep. Well, I started digging into the history of the polio vaccine. My understanding is that there was a good portion of people who actually got polio from the vaccine originally. And then what's that?
No, there were. And, there are also
people still get I mean, it says in the insert, which I'd say, I'm just guesstimating, but 99% of people who go get their shots don't read the insert, not the pamphlet, but the insert that actually comes from the manufacturer that says you may or may not get the virus, you may or may not be protected, you may or may not spread it by off-gassing. Most people don't even know any of that stuff, or the ingredients, or the side effects. So, it's like, I'm sorry, continue.
No, it's hard to get those handouts, by the way. You can't get them anywhere unless you go to the actual drug manufacturer's website. You can't get them from the pharmacy. Many doctors' offices don't have them.
Really?
So, even though they're supposed to, I went on a quest, and I said, I'm going to get some vaccine handouts, and actually the only way I could get them was by going to Mark and getting the handouts. So I think with the 1986 thing, I really think the government thought they were doing a good thing.
Right,
because I think there was still that energy of just unbelievable gratitude and deference to the concept of vaccination that they said, let's just make this happen. And I think that was the instant where we lost. Yeah. Really, I mean, if you watch Trace Amounts, you can see how the government plays into the, Trace Amounts, with the Bush family and how, okay, all of a sudden now we've got people in each other's pockets and our vaccine recommendations go through the roof. Right. But I think really there was a good intention there at one point. But when we took away consequence and we offered free marketing to the biggest agency in the world.
Side effects include,
Yeah, and if you take away consequence, you can see what happens. Look at our teenagers today. We don't have consequences.
Oh,
right?
No, of course
so you see a completely different generation of people. And this is what happened with the vaccine industry. It was like, well, if you're taking away what I'm afraid of,
right.
Here it's on, and I think that's what happened.
What makes me nervous about that, and I understand that it was probably maybe presented as a good thing, but you have pharmaceutical drugs in general. I was doing numbers. I actually didn't bring it with me, but it's like in the billions of dollars that pharmaceutical companies are sued every year for all their drugs. Oops, sorry, you just grew a third arm. Oh, sorry, you're brain dead. Oh, sorry, but the vaccines, which are from the same manufacturers, aren't held to that same standard. If that doesn't make people nervous, what would? You can sue them for everything else except for what you're injecting in your body and you're straight in your bloodstream, bypassing your immune system. By the way, retroviruses, I hope some of you Googled that, because that's another issue. You had simian virus 40. That's what I was talking about getting to with the polio vaccine back in 59. They realized that the SV40, simian virus 40, actually caused cancer in people. But they knew it for 3 years. They never took it out. So I look at that and go, oh, what? Okay, I'm not really trusting. The more and more I dig into this stuff, the trust goes lower and lower and lower. And then the straw that brought the camel's back for me was the 1986 Act that basically kept all the, from the people from suing the pharmaceutical companies. So, real quick, obviously you're passionate about this and you have children, but what was the issue that actually came out that was so important for you to actually go to the lengths that you have for this? What caused you to go, you know what? I'm doing something about this. What were you already in that progress, or what caused you just to stand up and say, no, I'm actually going to do something about this. I'm going to put my name on the line. I'm going to get ridiculed, but I'm going to do it anyways. What was it?
I'll tell you what it was. I have always been on the fence about vaccines. And when we had children, my husband and I decided that we were going to not vaccinate. That was a decision that we made as a family. And it turned out that my 4-year-old, couple of things. You've seen Trace Amounts, so you know what this means. She has the MTHFR mutation. So that was the right decision. But beyond that, she also is immune compromised. So she's extremely sensitive to her environment. And she has been made extremely ill. She's been hospitalized twice from viral shedding from the vaccine.
The off-gassing, basically.
Yes, yes.
I like that term, viral shedding. That's good.
Yeah. And what it is when they say, well, we're protecting the immune compromised, we're protecting the fragile, it makes
that makes no sense.
Crazy.
That makes there's no logic there. Wait, my kid just got shot with it and can spread it to your kid who can't get it. Wait, what?
Right.
But yet at the same time, in the public view or in the media, they're saying, no, your unvaccinated kid's actually endangering my unvaccinated kid, when it's the freaking opposite. I mean, isn't it logically?
Exactly.
Wouldn't it be the opposite?
Exactly. And people forget, because we're so indoctrinated to believe in vaccines, that children who aren't vaccinated are not carrying all these diseases. My unvaccinated children are not walking around with measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox.
Duh.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. I can't help it, but duh.
Yeah, and then tell me, look at my kids and see how healthy they are because we've committed to a healthy, holistic lifestyle. And that doesn't mean we don't use Western medicine. What that means is that we include nutrition and exercise and sleep coaching and all these things that are part of this diet for good health. And look at how healthy they are and tell me that this was a bad choice not to vaccinate. I can't buy that.
Proof is in the pudding. But I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, you say indoctrinated, I say brainwashed. And I don't mean to offend people. There's friends and family that are listening right now or watching on YouTube or going to watch this a month later. And I don't mean to offend people when I say that, but it's like, I'm sorry. I mean, think about it. Your kid is carrying it. He's just been vaccinated. He's got the virus. The kid who didn't get shot doesn't have the virus. He can't give it to anybody if he doesn't have the virus. Sorry. All right.
Yes. No, you're exactly right. And I do this all the time. And when I first came out, I was in the media quite a bit, and I would not reveal my children's vaccine status. I refused to do that. Okay. And what happened through the growth of the movement was that I connected with more and more and more families, and I felt more and more empowered in this decision. And then after I watched Trace Amounts, I said, I'm done apologizing. Oh. I don't vaccinate, and I'm glad that I did that research.
I hear you. Ladies and gentlemen, she's talking about Trace Amounts, which is a documentary. And I know there's one side, it's like, oh, it's complete hogwash, and there's no science behind it. But what's interesting is when there is science behind certain things, it's actual science. It is so poo-pooed. Even someone like Andrew Wakefield, someone was arguing with me about that. Oh, well, he was a liar, this and that. Well, people don't know that back in 2012, his partner, he actually had 12 people, including himself. 10 of them bailed and basically backstabbed him, my understanding. But his other partner that was with him stuck by him the entire time and said, no, we're not making money off this. We're trying to warn people that we've actually found a correlation. They were gastrointestinologists. Did I say that right? And they found that correlation that with the autoimmune diseases and the MMR vaccine. They found it. Yet and it turns out in court. But no one knows about it because it's not on the front page of Yahoo or Us Weekly or People Magazine. That story that basically said that he was this kook and made it all up, in court, they actually found that story was complete BS and the person who created that story was a liar. But you're not going to hear that. Andrew Wakefield's still considered this kook and all this other stuff. It's like, well, he's just a guy trying to bring what he found, and the other 10 people bailed on him. So, I mean, obviously you probably know about him as well. I don't know what's your opinion on Mr. Wakefield? I know we're kind of getting off subject, but since we're on vaccines, I mean, have you listened or heard about him?
Yeah, I think Wakefield is a really funny thing because it's sort of this, like, people who are just educated enough go, you think you're anti-vaccine because you think vaccines cause autism, and you're wrong because of Andrew Wakefield. and immediately on the other side of that argument, it's like, okay, first of all, his partner was immediately exonerated. Second of all, he's almost exonerated. Yep. Thirdly, do you know what Wakefield's article said? And the conversation ends?
Of course not. Nope.
Because nobody knows what he actually said. And what he talked about, you're right, he talked about the gut.
Yep. 70% of our immune system is in our gut. 70%.
Yes, and now we have kids with autism who are being healed through their gut. So this is not crazy. This is not fringe. This is something that we have come to know as a very important and profound factor in caring for children with autism is taking care of their gut. So he was way ahead of that. And to think of the families that had to wait another decade for more information to come out under a different aegis, because God forbid you mention vaccines, you're lost. But those families could have been helped that much longer ago if we had compounded on his research.
But no, I mean, you have billions and billions and billions and trillions of dollars since since his report came out in 99 or 98 or whatever it was, 2000. You have all this money being made, and maybe it's not. I know there's a lot of good people in the industry who are trying to be helpful, and there is stuff that actually has helped. But when we ignore the fact that it's chock full of GMO, heavy metals, and other garbage and viruses that we don't know, what's the long-term effects of this stuff? Oh, science is certain. Have you fast-forwarded 20 years? You have a freaking time machine where you can see what happens in 20 years when they're saying, I'm reading reports, they're expecting autism to be 1 in 3 in the next freaking 30 years. 1 in 3? What? Sorry to cut you off. I just got to say this real quick. My first show, I thought this was hilarious, and it's not. But Dr. Sanjay Gupta was on CNN. He said, we don't know what causes autism. We don't know what causes autism. His next sentence, but we know it's not vaccines. All right, that's all I have to say. Continue, Heather. I'm sorry.
Oh, No, that's actually really funny. And it's so funny because they talk about it in the documentary, too. And they say these studies came out and they said no more studies should be done. And I have my degree in psychology. My emphasis was research. And when you do research, you always end. You know your beginning because it's your hypothesis, and you know your end because your end is more research. No matter what. No matter what. And so when you see that, it's like I look at that and I say, it's so sad that people don't understand what we're up against. And I'll tell you, in the autism community, there is a very high percentage of people who do not accept, and I say accept, that the shots have a relationship to their child's autism. And I think that this is a really tricky place for parents to be. I have been at trace amount screenings with mothers of vaccine-injured children who didn't know.
Jeez.
So they watch trace amounts, and you see their world fall apart. And I've held them in my arms because, yes, they go, oh, my God, what did I do?
That's exactly what happened. Just for my listeners, I want them to know that we're actually talking to Heather. Did I say your last name right? Hawks?
Hawks, yeah, that's
Hawks.
correct.
Okay, we're actually talking to Heather Hawks. She's a statewide coordinator for Tim Donnelly, the referendum to halt SB277. This is Heather Hawks on the line with us. Real quick, I mean, do you? Oh, man, there's there's just so much. For you, is it the science, or is it the constitutionality of it, the rights? I mean, or both? I mean, more on one, less on the other. What's your side overall? Rights or science or what? Or both? When
I started, it was the rights.
Okay.
I said parents should have rights. If they're going to take away this medical right, where are they going to go from here? This is a slippery slope. And for a very long time, that has been my torch. And now the more involved I get in the information that's out there, and the more vaccine-injured families I meet, and the more I align with people who are very well educated on what really goes on in these industries, the more I say this information has to get out there. So but here's what I do. When I'm having conversations, I will tailor the conversation. I had a conversation last week with a very pro-vaccine medical person who by the end of the discussion was on my side. And my friend who was there said, I can't believe what you just did. So it's really about knowing your audience and understanding where they're coming from. It's asking questions.
Wow, I may have to pick your brain on that because I don't seem to. I mean, I've made people think, and that's the whole concept of this show. I said it from the beginning. I'm trying to activate your critical mind, folks, because it seems like most of us, including myself at times, are so. I don't mean to say dumbed down, but they're distracted and they're stressed out and they're focused on trying to make bills and pay taxes and all the other stuff. I mean, what do you think the biggest challenge with that is? Is it pride? Is it brainwashing? Is it the media? Like what do you think it is overall for people in general?
With vaccines, it's very easy for me to say what it is. It's that you take an issue that ties directly to the health of their child.
So like what?
Well, vaccines, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So and as a parent, believing and wanting to believe, and trust me, I want to believe this every day, that we have the ability to control the health of our child.
Yeah.
And so we've been told that part of that control is vaccinating. And we've also been told, and this is by the media, that the opposite of that, the villainy of that control, are those who don't vaccinate. So the media has polarized the two camps of parents. You're either pro-vax or anti-vax. And if you're one, you're not the other, and you hate each other.
And you're endangering everybody.
Vehemently. Right. And the media, by creating this landscape, has created this way where there's very difficult conversations that have to take place. It's very hard to have a conversation that says, did you know that vaccines aren't like totally 100% safe? Because parents who chose to vaccinate without having all the information are immediately going to have a wall up. Not just because this is about a decision they made and they would have to own that they made that decision without research.
Pride.
But it's also because vaccines are symbolic of this system. They are symbolic of the man. They are symbolic of our trust of physicians, of our trust of the government.
Right.
They archetypally hold all of that right in what they are, the essence of what they are. So if we call that into question, we take a sledgehammer to these people's entire paradigm. And a lot of people aren't ready for that.
No, they're not. Absolutely not. Yep. And so
that's why we have to come at it in ballet slippers and go, what issue? How am I going to dance around this issue for you without the sledgehammer? And that's how it has to happen. With
kid gloves and delicate. Heather, are you willing to hang out for a minute or two longer? Maybe get some calls coming in, or do you have to run, or what's your schedule like?
I can hang out. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we do have open phones, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I don't hang up on you. Like I said, I'm still new and for the most part, and I'm going to do everything I can not to lose it. So if for some silly reason I bonehead out and hang up on you, please call back. I don't mean to, but we actually looks like we do already have a call coming in. It'll come on the board here in a minute or so, but. Before we get too far, I got about 18 minutes left in the show. But Heather, I really do want to thank you. I know Tim was planning on being on. Whatever. You're so knowledgeable. This is pretty amazing. I'd actually I'll be in contact with you maybe once a month or so, or every couple months, maybe if you would think about coming on. We do YouTube, and eventually we're actually to be doing live stream YouTube as well. So we're building. I mean, this is the beginning of Zero Doubt Zone. We want to come to Zero Doubt. And we may never come to Zero Doubt on vaccines. I would like to think we could, but I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be possible. Looks like that call dropped off. What else? I actually had another question for you. What do you think? Does the state have the constitutional authority to actually force medical professionals to perform medical procedures on patients that may actually cause harm? So, I mean, the doctor thinks, well, shoot, man, this kid's got immune compromised, but I got to do it now for the state. Like, do you see that being a big issue? I mean, that's, in your opinion, unconstitutional? It's okay? What?
Well, it flies in the face of informed consent, which is the cornerstone of medical integrity in the entire world, not just here in America.
Right.
So that's where it gets really weird for me. And people go, well, informed consent's really a guideline. It's not a law. So you can't sue on the concept of informed consent. But what I just heard this past weekend from another lawyer said, actually, we're going to be able to, as long as you say, I'm exercising my right to informed consent, and saying no, then it does become a legal issue. But this is where, it's like, I'm not a lawyer. I'm so not able to speak to that. But what I think is the doctors are part of the culture issue as well. So I think patients are starting to see the pharmaceutical companies triangulate upon them, and they go, I can't go to school without my vaccines. I can't go to my doctor because there's a sign on the door that says if I don't vaccinate on schedule, they're kicking me out of their practice. And I just got a letter in the mail from my insurance company that says they're dropping me if I'm not on schedule with my vaccines. So they're really trying to terrify the general public into vaccinating. And I really think this whole approach is backfiring.
I truly sure hope so. How many more signatures are needed for the referendum? Do you know?
Well, because it's a grassroots effort, we have to be really careful about what we share about our progress, because we are using volunteers. And so if we say that we're doing so awesome, everyone will go, oh, that's great, and they'll stop collecting. So we're like, no, we can't do that, because what we're seeing in this effort is not just the camaraderie and the growth of the movement, but we are seeing a tremendous amount of success. So we need to make sure we continue with the momentum and continue to build that success, because that's how we're going to get to that finish line.
Awesome. Heather, we actually have some more calls coming in. I will send out the number. It's 831-479-1080 for our guest from the Donnelly camp, Heather Hawks, who is the statewide coordinator for the referendum to halt the mandatory vaccine law, SB277. So let's go to Dan in Pacific Grove. Let's see, Dan, how are you doing, sir? What is on your mind? Dan, welcome to Zero Doubt Zone.
Good evening. First time I've tuned in here, and I'm glad I did. Very informative guest.
Thank you.
And really admire what she's doing, and very good interview. Great job.
Thank you.
Let's see. I suppose the only thing I could add is I know some doctors and dentists locally who agree with you, who are on this side of the picture. Some would have us believe that the medical community are, all scientists agree, quote unquote, all doctors agree, quote unquote. That is not the case. As you quoted, you mentioned with Dr. Wakefield's work. But could you tell me, please, the website? Is there a website for the effort you're involved in now, the referendum?
Yeah.
I'd like to learn more about that.
Heather, I was actually going to ask you that as well. What's the website people can go to?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. It is SB277Referendum.com.
Okay. Excellent. Hey, Dan from Pacific Grove, thank you so much for calling. I actually have, it looks like Tim Donnelly is calling in. Let me see if I can navigate this real quick. We got him on line 4, and I've never had this many callers before. Rosie's probably sitting there going, "Come on, man! I trained you how to do this." I'm like, "But Rosie, my brain is like a sieve. I'm doing the best I can." So bear with me, folks. It looks like Tim Donnelly did call in. Heather, thank you so much for holding on. We're almost there. All right, Zero Doubt Zone entering. We have Tim Donnelly calling in with his statewide coordinator, Heather. Hey, Mr. Donnelly, thank you so much for calling. Thank you. Welcome to Zero Doubt Zone.
It's my pleasure to be here.
All right. Excellent. So I have two of the power hitters defending our liberties here for SB277. What would you like to say, Mr. Donnelly?
Well, I'm sure Heather has probably said everything that needs to be said, but look, this issue is not about vaccines. It's not even about parents' rights. It's really about a fundamental human right to control your own body and not have the government force you and intimidate you and hold your child's educational future hostage. It's really about control, and it's about coercion, and it's about whether or not we're going to stand up for basic natural rights that every human being is endowed with by their creator or not.
Well put. I mean, you actually sound like a modern-day founding father, in my opinion. Huh. almost like a younger Ron Paul. I don't know your stance on Ron Paul, but to me, I did a lot of research in your bio too, and the Minuteman Project, the audit of the my brain is
Child Protective Services.
Child Protective Services. I mean, sir, you're not even in office. And you're still standing up for us, man. And I have to applaud you, both you and Heather, for doing this, because I know it's not easy, and I'm sure you get ridiculed. I mean, what obviously that's the biggest issue for you. And I did.
Well, I don't care what people think. I care about whether or not.
Amen, brother.
About whether or not we're going to live free. And I've heard talk radio hosts say, if you don't believe in vaccinations, you're stupid. Well, what a brilliant argument. And this is a guy with a 50,000 watt station that is intimidating people into not thinking.
Hey,
but
I'm on a 50 watt. I'm just kidding. I'm totally joking.
Well, let me flip it around on you though.
Okay.
But here's the silver lining to this whole thing. You now have thousands of patriots who are rising up, and I say patriots applying to people who are Democrats, independent, Republicans, and non-political.
Right.
But they're patriots because they're standing up for freedom against an oppressive government.
But isn't that also now considered, and that's something else, is part of the National Defense Authorization Act? That's something I went off on my third show, was that in that own right, you're considered domestic terrorist if you stand up for your rights. I mean, you actually went to bat. I read that. I forgot about that. That was huge, by the way. Thank you. Mr. Donnelly actually went to bat for the people of California to not allow Obama's National Defense Authorization Act to come in and indefinitely detain.
Well, we've been through that. We went through that with the Japanese who lost their freedom and they lost their property, and we all know that that's wrong. But when every time we commemorate it, we say never again, but we don't do anything to stop the government from having that kind of power. It was never envisioned for them to have that kind of power. Right. But let me just finish my thought.
Yes.
Is you've spent some time on the radio now with Heather. So here's a person who is a perfect example of what's happening all over the state. You've got people who were never political, might not have even voted, but when the government knocked at their door and became a threat to their children and became a threat to their freedom and became a threat to their natural rights, they stood up.
Yeah.
And they organized in a way that I've never seen anything like this.
So maybe this is a good thing.
Well, I always look for the silver lining because we go through this life one time, and so I'm deeply encouraged and inspired by the thousands of people who are standing up for their rights, for personal freedom, and against an all-powerful, oppressive government. And that gives me a great deal of hope.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Would you guys be willing to take a call? Because there is Brian who's been hanging out for probably about 6 minutes. Brian, I do apologize from Aptos. I once again, I hope I don't hang up on either one of you guys. If I do, please call back. I do apologize. But let's. That's not it. My bad, you guys. I'm still working on it. Brian, I apologize, and Mr. Donnelly as well as Heather. That was probably pretty loud in your ear, so I'm working on getting those back. We got those. There we go. All right. So thank goodness I do have a really powerful team behind me who's willing to work with me on this. Like I said, my brain's like a sieve. But let's take the call from Brian from Aptos. You're on the line with Tim Donnelly and Heather Hawks on Zero Doubt Zone. Thank you for calling. What's on your mind?
Good evening. Yes, the question that I had is, as you've mentioned, there's been this explosion in autism that's beyond belief almost. There's also in the same time frame been this huge growth in what has been deemed ADHD or ADD or what have you, the attention deficit disorder. I know some of that is just a lack of tolerance for children who aren't cookie cutter, products of passive, sit in their seats and behave all day.
Right.
But is there any correlation between these vaccines that we've been giving these children and ADHD?
Tim and Heather, maybe you guys done more research on that. I'm not a scientist. I've done some research, but I've done quite a bit of research, but not enough on that. Do you guys have any info on that? Or where he could be directed to find information about that?
I think that's a great question, and I know that Eric mentions it briefly in Trace Amounts.
Okay.
He mentions that some of the symptoms of attention deficit disorder mirror some of the symptoms that can come from side effects of some of the ingredients of the vaccines. Mm-hmm. And then he sort of points out the link that Merck makes the vaccines, and then they also make the drugs that treat attention deficit disorder and hyperactivity. I don't know, maybe NVIC. Tim, what do you think for a resource to learn more about that connection? Because I don't doubt it, but nutrition is obviously a huge component.
Oh, yeah.
I think technology is a critical component. I would be curious myself to do more research on the link between ADD and vaccines.
Yeah. Brian, thank you for calling.
I think that's a good resource. I would also say that isn't it convenient that when you create a problem and then you get protected by the government, so you have zero liability, and then you get to make money off coming up with a solution.
Here you got injured, but here's the pill to fix it. Oh, if that doesn't work, we got another one for you.
Yeah, and they all cost a lot of money.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh, so you were actually referring to the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986, and the court that then gives people, I think only about 30% actually get the money from proving that they actually were injured. I'm assuming you're referring to that whole process. Tim, what's the next step for you guys? Like, what's the next big push? I mean, do you guys have a big rally coming up? I mean, anything? I got 4.5 minutes left. The floor is both of you guys. Say anything you want for the next 4.5. I would love for you to take over.
Well, look, we've come a long way. We've got thousands of people who are carrying petitions out there, and the bottom line is we need day in and day out from now until September 25th. We need people to continue to get signatures because every last signature is going to count. And this is something that has awakened clearly a sleeping giant.
Oh yeah.
Here in the state of California, people are watching what is going to happen from all over the country. This isn't just about trying to referend one bill. This is literally about a moment in history as to whether we're going to have a seismic shift, and the government's now going to be in charge of your health care down to what you inject into your body, or you lose your rights. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. My team member actually just spotted. I actually have a list of people and places, locations in Santa Cruz. That's where you're calling into, where we could sign up, and I'll go over that at the end of the show. But every county in or in California has this. And Heather, I'm sorry, could you repeat what website you can go to?
Yeah, it's SB277 Referendum.com.
Excellent. We have a couple more minutes left. You know, Tim, I saw the statement you put on. It was recorded, and you said that you came at this for choice, and you said you did vaccinate your children. And I don't mean to put you on the spot. You don't have to answer it, but you did say at the end of that, after all this, you're kind of going, you know, it's really made me rethink that. What are some of the things that popped up that made you rethink it?
Well, the biggest issue for me is the mercury and the mercury-based preservative, thimerosal, was known to be dangerous, and yet, even though the government acknowledged that way back when, in 97 or whatever, and then they supposedly ended using it in most of the childhood vaccines in 2000. Most, but they kept the doses around and did two things with them. One, they had stockpiles all over the place, and they used them up. And the very last one, according to my information, was used in the United States in 2005. And then they shipped the rest of the stuff around the world to developing nations and third world countries as if somehow it wasn't good enough for us, but it's good enough for them. So this is all about whether or not you trust the government. So when I hear people, especially people who should know better, people who identify themselves as libertarian or Tea Party or whatever, even, Democrats that are against the man, and yet when it comes to vaccines, they lay down their brain or shut it off, and they're like, yeah, whatever the government says. Yeah, I totally trust them 100%.
I never even thought of that. Right? Yeah,
and it's like, hello, wake up.
Oh, man.
Why do you fear freedom so much? Don't fear freedom. Freedom comes with risks, but you are the one who should assess the risk for your family, yourself, and your child.
Amen, Mr. Donnelly. Thank you so much. We got a minute left. I just want to thank both of you, Tim Donnelly, former assemblyman, and his statewide coordinator, Heather Hawks, for joining me. This was a riveting interview. I want to thank both of you so much. This is to the referendum to halt the mandatory vaccine bill, SB277. Tim and Heather, thank you so much for calling in. You made my month, I have to say, and keep up the good fight. I'm actually going to list. I'll let you guys go, but thank you so much for calling in. I look forward to speaking with you again. So, hey, these are the locations, you guys. Dr. Brian Anthony Cypress Chiropractic, 3051 Porter Street. We got Holistic Family in 710 River Street. Pacific Center for Integral Healing, 2955 Park Avenue, SoCal. Pleasure Point Acupuncture. No, it's not acupuncture. 41st Avenue, 879. You can look this up on SB.